Whew, we are very quickly winding down to the finale of the HBO Max Original Series Tokyo Vice. This week's episodes 6 and 7 are dropping, and if you've been waiting to start this show, don't wait any longer, because it is building to something powerful. Tokyo Vice follows American journalist Jake Adelstein, who's working the crime beat at a Japanese newspaper in Tokyo. He uncovers a story that leads him into an association with one of the city's organized crime families. Alright, so this will have some spoilers from the previous episodes, but I'm going to stay away from specific plot points within these current two episodes. So we've watched Jake become more comfortable in his job at the paper, and he's sort of befriended two different police detectives. Now he gains more influence, which has then led to an interaction with the head of a Yakuza organization. And to quickly recap the last two episodes, Jake was taken to a meeting with the head of Chihari Kai, who then asks a favor of him, to find out who the mole is in the Yakuza family. So then Jake uses his ties with Katagiri to get some intel, which is then supposed to curb any violence and stop the war between the two families that seems to be brewing. Now, Sato has a defining moment within the Yakuza. He's becoming less certain that it's the life that he wants, but is forced to kill the mole, who then turns out to be his mentor. And after a very personal and introspective conversation with Sam, Sato decides to go and meet with the head of Chihari Kai, and then tell him what we assume is that Sato just wants out. But Tosawa sent assassins to kill the Oyabun, and Sato ends up saving his life. Now the fight scene that takes place for this is really immersive, with the camera just dancing around the actors, minimizing the cuts in the action to really make it more exciting and tense. Now Sam is also confronted by a guy who's working for her family, and then is blackmailed in order to stay hidden. So now we're at episodes 6 and 7, where we watch some of the ramifications play out as a result of the actions in those previous episodes. Now, Sato is obviously more powerfully connected in the family after saving the Oyabun's life, and because of what he had to do in that fight. But he's been changed. I mean, he's hardened, colder, he's almost detached. He looks like he's becoming the thing that he's trying to escape. But his new outlook on life is going to bring about some consequences for other characters, and when those go down, it gets pretty hairy. I mean, in one sense, it's really sad to watch this change because we know that a softer and kinder Sato exists. But in order to survive in the life that he's got himself involved with, that gentler side, it just can't be shown to many, if any, people. And then the Oyabun is not only indebted to Sato, but now to Jake as well for uncovering the Tozawa mole. Now, should he call in that favor? And if Jake does, what is that going to mean? Will the slate then be reset, or is it going to offset the balance of their power, putting Jake more closely connected to the family? The conversations that happened between Jake and Katagiri, they're just so great because we watch the hunger and impatience of youth struggle against the wisdom and patience of experience. Now, Katagiri has been in the game for quite a while, and he sees the long game, but Jake is just more nearsighted, and he can only view the immediate. And it's also great to watch Katagiri working on his own sort of investigation. Now, Ken Watanabe isn't featured in these two episodes for a ton of screen time, but he's a powerhouse presence every time that he's on screen. He commands the scenes in a way that almost demands you sit up and pay the closest attention to his words and actions, but he does it in such an unassuming way that's filled with authority. Now, that's all kinds of contradictory, I know, but I think it really captures what he does with his character. We get to watch some of the aftermaths of the failed assassination attempt on the Oyabun of Chihari Kai. And then that scene, oh, it's incredibly tense. I mean, we can feel the electricity in the room as some dialogue is exchanged. Now, it still baffles me from a cultural standpoint how some of these things are resolved. I mean, from what we see in American gangster films, if one family tried to harm another, just all-out war happens and the carnage is insane. What's depicted in this show is so much more mature and respectful. But even though it's more subdued, that doesn't mean that scheming and planning don't also occur. Tozawa is still very power hungry, and just based on the assassination attempt alone, I mean, he is willing to do just about anything to take Chihari Kai out. So even if there is a reprieve, we can almost be certain that chaos is looming right around the corner. There are a couple of reveals in these episodes that I just didn't suspect, so I never saw them coming. Now, they may not have come as a surprise to you, but I enjoyed that it caught me off guard. Jake is still continuing his search into the suicides and loan sharks, and I love how the story continues to make this element relevant even when it feels like the focus has been shifted elsewhere. But there are a few key moments where Jake is kind of poking the bear unnecessarily, which could lead to something very uncomfortable for him. Now, I like that a lot of the focus in these episodes is on the things that are happening to the other characters. Now, Jake is still a prominent figure in the narrative, but we continue to dive into Sato and Sam, who are becoming more complex and then very captivating. I love their dynamic, and I found myself torn about whether I want them to function as a couple or not. I mean, in one sense, they're both lonely and hurting and can really comfort each other. But in another sense, they're each so damaged that it's probably not very healthy for them to get involved with each other. But that's also what makes for dramatic and engaging storytelling, which this show continues to deliver. It's hard to believe that the season is almost coming to a close. There's only one more episode left, and I thought it would be something like 2 hours long, but that final episode is only going to be just a little bit over an hour. So I'm really curious about how the season is going to wrap itself up. Now, as the season does get closer to its finale, the tension is rising for Sato as he gains more power within the Yakuza. I mean, even if he doesn't want it. And Jake is uncovering more and more of the suicide story, but in the process, putting himself closer and closer to potential danger. Sam is also putting herself in danger by moving forward with opening her club, but also having to deal with the blackmailer who's working for her family. And then Katagiri is working an investigation that is sure to create trouble on many different fronts. The show continues to be beautiful to look at, and although a lot of it is rather dark in the presentation, the lighting and shadows help to increase the drama that enhances the story. And the pace of these 2 episodes is patient, but it's not slow, especially as each scene builds upon the tension, making them exciting to experience. So if you haven't started binging yet, you need to sort that out, and then you'll be all ready for the season finale next week. There's sex, nudity, a lot of profanity, and a bunch of brutal violence. I give the episodes 6 and 7 of Tokyo Vice 4 out of 5 couches. I know I've asked this before, but after seeing these most recent episodes, who's your favorite character? I'm still loving Sato because his story is so rich, and I love watching his internal struggle. But let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.